Hello, thank you for joining us. Today, I am your host, Dr. Roberta Westbrook, and welcome to the Pet Pawcast here at the Campus for All Animals, the Houston SPCA. We appreciate you joining us every week to give you more information about taking care of your pets and keeping them happy and healthy for years to come. So we have an exciting topic for you today because we get lots of questions about this from pet parents, and that is how to take care of your pet's paws and their toenails. What kind of things would you like to know about taking care of your pet's paws and toenails? Think of some questions. Please post them in the chat, and hopefully I can give you some guidance today. While you think of your questions, I do want to introduce you to our wonderful pet of the week. This is Honeybee. Honeybee is about a 1-year-old female. She has been spayed, and she's just a wonderful, wonderful pet. She's going to make a great addition to someone's family. So let me tell you about Honeybee. Honeybee was rescued by our ambulance service, who goes out into the community and brings in injured and sick animals. Our veterinary team will get those animals healthy, and then they'll be on their way to their wonderful forever homes. Honeybee was one of those animals. She came in with a severe case of mange, and she was underweight. And so she had a lot of issues to overcome, but she has made leaps and bounds, and she's come so far. She's so sweet, loves people. She's crate trained. She loves to snuggle, and she loves to play with other dogs. So we're very thankful to her foster family for taking her in. Her foster family was able to keep her in a home so that she could get healthy in a very comfortable environment. So thank you so much to all of the fosters out there. And if you're interested in foster, please go to our website and get more information. Okay, so today we are going to talk about paw care for your pets. What do you need to know about paw care for your pets? You know, there's lots that we can talk about as it relates to paw care. So let me just start with some questions. What do you guys have in terms of questions regarding your pet's paws and toenails?
So the number one question we get is, how do we safely cut our dog's nails?
How do you safely cut your dog's nails, and your cat for that matter? So when we're talking about trimming pets' nails, it does help to keep them nice and trim. The problem with not trimming your pet's toenails is as they grow out, they can grow too long and they can begin to curve. And sometimes when they begin to curve, they will, in fact, go into the skin underneath the paw. So they'll grow along and they'll curve around, and then they'll actually penetrate your pet's paw pads. So it really is important to keep your pet's toenails trimmed. So how do you do that? The first thing you want to identify in your pet is if your pet has transparent or clear toenails, or if your pet has black or pigmented toenails. It is much easier to trim your pet's toenails if they are clear or are not pigmented. The reason that is because we want to avoid trimming the portion of the nail that contains blood vessels and nerves. We only want to trim the portion of the toenail that is essentially keratin, or the hard part of the nail. We don't want to trim so short that we get back to the blood vessels and the nerves in that sensitive part of the toenail. So there's lots of different ways that you can trim the toenails. And so we can show on Honeybee here that, if you look at Honeybee's toenails, there's a small portion of her toenail at the tip, and it's white. And there is no pink, there's no pink sort of tissue beyond that white part. You only want to trim the white part. You only want to trim the very, very tip of the toenail. That very tip of the toenail is oftentimes very thin and sharp. And there's usually a juncture between the sharp, thin part of the toenail. And as it goes back toward the paw, you will notice that the toenail becomes thicker, and you can see the pink or red sensitive living tissue. You want to avoid that. There's also, and you want to just trim that white part. There's several different types of toenail trimmers. And so you may want to do some research online or talk to your family veterinarian about which type of toenail trimmer is most appropriate for your pet. But make sure that if you're going to try this at home, that you have assistance with you. You have someone who can distract your pet or pet them while you're trimming their toenails. And you may want to get your pet used to it by playing with their paws ahead of time. So make sure that you don't just walk up to your pet, grab their paw, and start trimming the toenails. That can be overwhelming for them. You want to gradually get them used to just touching the paw and holding the paw and putting pressure on each of their digits so they get used to the handling. And then it won't be quite as scary when you come toward them with an instrument that looks like this and it's new to them and they don't know what to expect. And now you touch this instrument to their paw. Sometimes that can be overwhelming for the pets. And so you want to, work them up to understanding what's going on and making it a positive experience. So that might mean trimming a toenail and giving a treat and then giving them a break. Trimming another toenail, giving them a treat and giving them a break until they get used to it, realize that it's not such a bad experience after all. And then, it may take you an hour to get those 10 toenails trimmed, but it'll be a happy experience for everyone and they'll be more comfortable.
So Honeybee has like perfect nails, so we can see right through them. If our dog or cat has black nails, should we get them, to a professional instead because it is harder to see that quick?
I think if you're uncomfortable with it and if it's your first time, I would definitely have a professional do it and they may be willing to teach you how to do it. If you have done toenail trimming before and you feel fairly confident and you have some assistance, you could go by the method of, again, looking at the shape of the toenail. As the toenail goes toward the paw, toward the base of the paw, it's thick, it's thicker. As you see that it starts to thin out, that is the area of the toenail that does not contain any blood vessels or nerves. And so it sometimes is a very, very short portion of the toenail that you can trim. But if you feel confident, you've done this before, you have some assistance, you can try to trim the very, very tip of the toenail at home. Now, in a worst case scenario, and you do this at home and you misjudge, or your pet moves, for example, while you're trimming the toenail, and you accidentally trim the sensitive part of the toenail that has blood vessels and nerves, then this could be a painful experience. You might notice that your pet withdraws their paw. They could vocalize because it's been a little bit painful, and you could see some bleeding. So if that occurs, what you want to do is make sure that you get them to a veterinarian and try to put some pressure over the toenail to stop the bleeding. There's a couple of things that you can do in the meantime to kind of get that bleeding to stop. If you can go to your local pet store, they do make what we call quick stop or powder that you can put on the end of the bleeding toenail, and that can help to stop the bleeding. So you can certainly purchase some over-the-counter products. If you don't have any quick stop, you can take a cotton ball or a soft cloth and put pressure over that toenail. But it's going to be a little bit sensitive, and your pet may not be in agreement to you doing that. If the bleeding continues, please feel free, take them to your family veterinarian and make sure that they can get the bleeding to stop.
And what about using cornstarch to stop the bleeding if we don't have that quick stop?
Absolutely. Cornstarch is another product that you may have around your home and your kitchen that you can use as well to put on the tip of the toenail. So great suggestion.
And like you talked about, getting our animals used to it. We know some of them freak out. So is it painful for them at all? Or is it just like cutting our nails?
So if you do not trim the quick, so the quick is that sensitive portion of the toenail that I've been mentioning that has the blood vessels and the nerves. We call that the quick. If your pet seems sensitive, even when you did not trim the quick, the reason is you're putting pressure on the nail and it can just be an uncomfortable sensation. They're just not used to it. It isn't painful to trim the proper portion of the nail, but some animals are just a little bit nervous about the whole experience and the pressure. Particularly if you have an older animal, oftentimes the nails become thicker as they get older because the keratin layers of the nail don't shed as quickly as they get older. So oftentimes older animals have thicker toenails. And so when you're trying to trim even the proper part of the toenail, it takes a lot of pressure. And that can make your pet feel uncomfortable. I wouldn't say painful, but it's probably a little bit uncomfortable for them.
And we do have, different types of tools available. Is there a difference between using one or the other? Or, is it a pro to using a Dremel instead?
Yes. So, this type of tool we call a guillotine nail trimmer. And that's because you can put the toenail inside this little hole here. And right at the level of where the quick ends and the tip of the toenail begins, you can squeeze this tool and it will make a cut right at the level between the tip of the toenail and the quick. So this is called a guillotine nail trimmer. These are called Resco nail trimmers, and these trim side to side. So you would put the toenail in here and trim sort of side to side, or you can do it up and down as well. So it's just a different method. Both of them are very effective. Now, these will put pressure on the toenails, and so these could be a little bit uncomfortable for your pet. Another option is to use a tool like a Dremel tool. So you can use one like this that is made specifically for pets. It has a nice little guard on here to help you not go too far onto your pet's toenail. You can also use a Dremel tool that you would use around the house for household products. And the way this works is it's a high-speed file, essentially. So just like we use nail files on our fingernails, this works essentially like a high-speed file. And so when you turn it on, it spins, like you may be able to tell here. And when you stick your pet's toenail in here, it grinds it down. It tends to be a little bit more tolerable because it's high speed, it's relatively quiet, and it doesn't put a lot of pressure on the toenail. So some pets will tolerate a Dremel better than they will the pressure of cutting. So again, if you have any questions, you can talk to your family veterinarian, but you can also talk to your local groomer. If you have a groomer that you take your pet to for haircuts and baths, they can also help you determine which tool might be best for your pet. And they may be willing to show you how to do it at home so that you can keep your pets safe and make this experience very easy for everyone.
And how often should we cut our pets' nails?
You know, it may vary. Every pet is different. So let's say you are an active family. You're going out on hikes and walks each day. Sometimes the toenails will get, worn down on their own in a very natural way. As your pet is walking on hard surfaces, it will naturally sort of grind down the tips of the toenails. However, if you're not doing a lot of activity or your pet's not walking on hard surfaces, those toenails may grow out, may need to be trimmed a little bit quicker than others. So the thing to remember is, when you're looking at your pet's stand on the floor, if your pet's toenails are long enough to curve around that tip part and touch the floor, if it's possible to trim that part that's touching the floor, that might be something that you can use as a gauge to when it's appropriate to trim your pet's toenails. You don't necessarily want them to curve around and have the toenail touching the floor.
So as we, checking our pet's paws and cutting the nails, we often see a different type of nail, the dewclaw. Can you tell us a little bit about it and why, do some pets, you can see it more often? And sometimes I've heard you can surgically remove it and why that is.
Absolutely. So the dewclaw is essentially the first digit on the inside, the medial or middle aspect of your pet's paws. So when it's in the same position as our thumb would be on a pet's paw. You will notice it because it will be much shorter. It does not touch the floor. And there's generally two types of dewclaws. One type has a bony attachment to the paw. And then some dewclaws essentially have a toenail and then skin that doesn't have a bony attachment. And so it sort of flops around as an appendage of your pet's paw. We call those dewclaws. And you're exactly right that dewclaws can either remain on your pet's paw, particularly if they have a bony attachment. We usually just leave them and trim the toenail just like we would do all of the other toenails. But in some cases, if you notice that your pet's dewclaw is sort of flimsy and hanging out there and doesn't seem to have a tight bony attachment to your paw, oftentimes we will remove those dewclaws by surgically removing it and then suturing the open surgical incision closed. And the reason we do that is because a dewclaw that's sort of hanging out there, not attached with a bony attachment, sometimes can get caught on things. So as your pet is running through the house, or if you're hiking and you're running through the forest or the trees, sometimes the dewclaw, because it's not tightly adhered to the paw, it can get caught on trees, brush, carpet, and it can cause a little bit of pain and sometimes even get torn. So it's certainly up to you and your veterinarian about what is the best option for your pet in terms of leaving the dewclaw as it is or removing it.
And somebody asks, what if some dogs have cracked paws?
Absolutely. So your dog's paw pads are calloused skin. It's very thick, calloused skin, and it protects them as they're walking through, rough and very temperature surfaces. And so sometimes just because of the activity, they can become dry and cracked, particularly if your pet is spending a lot of time outdoors on rough surfaces. The skin on those paw pads can become a little bit dry and begin to crack. So you might want to consider, using some soothing oils or lotion on your pet's paw pads to soften that skin up and prevent that dryness and cracking. So that's the reason that occurs. There are lots of commercial products that you can purchase. Often, if you're looking online, you can search these products under the term paw butter. So there's lots of different paw butters that you can use to put on your pet's paw pads that make them nice and soft, like a baby's bottom. And then you can also use household products like coconut oil as well to keep your pet's paws nice and soft and prevent that dryness.
Coconut oil is a good one. Can we use human lotion or moisturizer?
If I would prefer that use something specific for dogs that we know is not going to be toxic if they ingest it, and we may not know the long-term effects. So using something as natural as possible or something that's approved for use in dogs and or cats would be most appropriate.
If a dog's paw is like inflamed or red, what could be the cause of that?
That's a great question. If you notice that your dog's paws are red, inflamed, or they're licking at them, there certainly could be lots of reasons for that. If you've been with us for any length of time, you know that I've spoken many times about allergies in our pets and how allergies in pets will frequently present as skin problems and itchiness. And one of the places that pets can scratch or lick as a result of itchiness is the paw pads and between the toes. So if you notice that your pet is licking between his or her toes, or they're looking red and inflamed, it certainly could be possible that there's an allergy. And sometimes it's a contact allergy. They've been walking through the grass and the mud, and now they're getting a little bit of irritation from the dirt and the grasses there. So something that you can do to combat that is to clean your pet's paws when you come in from outdoors. So it could mean that when your pet is coming in, you can use a warm washcloth and wipe all of the debris off of the paw pads of your pet and just keep them clean after your walks. So if it's not allergies though, sometimes it's again just other irritations that have come into contact with your pet's paws, and cleaning them off could be a good first start.
Somebody asked, what do our paws smell like? Corn chips.
Well, I think that's largely because of some of the skin that secretes sebum and oil and debris that gets caught between the toes. Between the toes, it's a dark, moist environment. Bacteria love this area. Fungus loves this area. And so all the bacteria, sometimes the fungus that builds up between there, can just give someone a foul odor. And so keeping your pet's paws clean will be a way to prevent that smell.
Should we groom or trim the hair in between the paws?
That's a great question. You don't need to do that on a regular basis. If your pet goes to the groomer and they regularly get haircuts, they may trim it a little bit. But if it's not causing a problem and your pet doesn't have an issue, I would not worry about trimming that hair.
And then is it normal to have some hair on the actual paw?
Some hair on the paw.
Like hyperkeratosis. We've heard that word.
Yes, hyperkeratosis. So hyperkeratosis is when you have excessive dryness, cracking, and thickness of the pet paw pads. So the paw pads, again, we mentioned that dry, cracked skin earlier. Sometimes that can become extensive. And we call that hyperkeratosis. It's almost, again, an increased thickness in the keratin layer, those rougher keratin layers of the skin. And it can be uncomfortable for pets. Sometimes you might even see it on the nose, where the tip of the nose also will get dry and crusty. So again, one of the best ways to combat that is to use a paw butter or something like a coconut oil to keep those areas nice and smooth. In some cases, if this happens in puppies that are unvaccinated or puppies that come from unknown backgrounds, that could be a symptom of an infectious disease. And so if you notice hyperkeratosis or extremely dry, cracked paw pads or nose in a puppy, please see your family veterinarian, because it's possible that could be a different medical condition.
Another question is, like, now that hot, summer is over, do we still need to protect the dog's paws on our walks?
Oh yes, all summer we have been talking about how to prevent your dog's paw pads from getting burned from hot concrete and hot surfaces during this hot Texas summer. It's still important to be aware of the temperature, but I will say as we get into cooler temperatures, we don't really see those sorts of thermal injuries like we do during the summer. And so you don't have to worry necessarily about only going out in the very, very early morning or late in the evening. As it gets cooler, you could certainly go out in the middle of the day and not have any risk of thermal injury to your pet's paw pads. So just be aware of the temperature. Another thing that you can do is use your own hand. Take your hand, put your hand on the concrete. You cannot hold your hand on the concrete comfortably for 5 seconds. It may be too hot for your pets, and it may be a good idea to shorten those walks.
And of course, we can't forget about our cats. You know, they need their nails trimmed as well. But will cutting the cat's nails stop them from scratching my couch?
Oh, well, cutting the cat's nails stop them. No, it won't. Unfortunately, it may help to prevent some of the damage that happens if they're scratching in inappropriate areas. But that's a natural motion for cats. It's a natural behavior for cats to mark their territory actually by doing scent marking and scratching on sometimes furniture, cat trees, it could be curtains, but trimming the nails often won't stop that. It's going to be a matter of teaching your cat the appropriate surfaces to scratch on versus not.
So a scratching post doesn't help trim the nails, it's more of a behavior?
The scratching the post is not going to trim the nails effectively. It does help. But it's probably going to be still necessary to do some toenail trimming occasionally.
And we've heard of some, nail covering to protect, scratches on the couches, or is declawing a safe alternative as well?
So if you're wondering what to do, maybe you don't know how to trim your cat's toenails, or, you haven't been able to get your pet into a groomer to get this done. For cats, what else can you do? Well, they do make nail coverings. They're usually plastic nail coverings that you can get put on the surface of your pet's toenails. These can actually cover the sharp tip of the pet's toenails and prevent some of the damage that could be done when they are scratching furniture or the curtains, or just kind of running around the house. Having those toenail coverings on there, it's a dull surface, and so sometimes that can actually be very helpful. When it comes, and you may have to talk to a groomer or your family veterinarian about getting those applied. Now, the other thing that you asked about is declawing your cat. And declawing your cat is a much different procedure. That is actually a surgical procedure where the surgeon will remove this distal portion of your cat's toe. So it's essential to disarticulating or removing this distal joint here. And it used to be a very common procedure in veterinary medicine, but over years, research has shown that there could be some behavior and physical consequences to doing this. And so generally, you won't see this recommended. And so I would say talk to your family veterinarian about other options for trimming your cat's toenails. Well, I know we have talked about a lot of information. You met Honeybee, so thank you to Honeybee, and thank you to Dr. Brown, our assistant today. And again, come on down to the Campus for All Animals, the Houston SPCA. Remember, this Saturday, if you are available, please make your way on out to Eureka Heights Brewery. Eureka Heights has a new release of their beer called My Own Best Friend. It's going to be wonderful. And when you purchase beer at Eureka Heights tomorrow, September 10th, between 12 and 4 p.m., all of the proceeds are going to go to the Houston SPCA. So bring your dog out. It's a dog-friendly event. Bring your dog out, get some beer called My Own Best Friend, and make your way out to Eureka Heights tomorrow between 12 p.m., 4 p.m. Join us. All of the proceeds are going to go to the Houston SPCA. So maybe we'll see you tomorrow, or we'll see you this weekend in our adoption center. Thank you again for joining us. I'm Dr. Westbrook, and we'll see you next week.